I want to start today by remembering Squadron Leader Pooji, who died last year. He was the most highly decorated member of the ex-service community in this country from World War II. And I think it is appropriate for us to remember him, because he was also the president of the United Indian Ex-Services Association. And he was a very nice man, great fun, lots of humor, lots of everything. And he said when he came as a serviceman just after the war, he was invited by the Queen for tea. But when he came back as an immigrant, they didn't want to talk to him. And I think we need to remember that a lot of the people who came here in the early days were the ex-servicemen from World War II who had done remarkable things. He had a distinguished Flying Cross, and he was a remarkable man. So I just wanted to remind ourselves of his service and of his service to the ex-servicemen in this country. That's appropriate, I think. Now today, I want to just say something very different to what I usually say. I usually talk about the men who fought and what they contributed to war effort. And to some extent, we all know what they contributed, because in the Second World War, the Indian involvement was crucial. But what is amazing is that people from Africa came, and there were Africans in Burma, and that there were Jamaicans. And in the First World War, there were Jamaicans at the Somme. And I think these are the things we have to keep in mind, and especially for our children, because they must never think that they have no right to be here. The right was won for them by their grandfathers and great-grandfathers. It took the Jamaicans 6 months to get permission to come and die at the Somme for Britain. So it is worth remembering and recalling. But the Queen has said this year is about women as agents of change. Well, I don't know about that in this respect, but I do want to remind ourselves of the mothers and wives who suffered hugely during wartime. And it's not just our mothers and our wives, those of us who are remembering the Indians, Africans and West Indians, but all wives and mothers who suffered and suffered, who every day they wondered whether their loved ones will come back to them alive or not. So in that sense, I think thinking about women is quite an important thing for us, because I've never spoken about that. Of course, in India, they had a bad time, the widows. There was very little money and very little care for them. I don't know what the tripartite agreement was between Britain and India, but there was not much for them. And we did raise some money for blankets and things. It seems very sad that the widows had such a bad time. But this is the story generally, isn't it? Once the war is over, then all those who are left behind are forgotten. They're not remembered. So let us just think for a moment also of the wives and mothers today. Thank you very much.
I thought I'd just say a word from the wonderful book speech given by Field Marshal the Viscount Slim, who of course is the hero of many serving soldiers today. It's about his impressions of the Indian Army. England was my mother, India the old United India, my foster mother, and a kind and generous one. For many years, like thousands of other British people, in comradeship with Indians, both Hindu and Mohammedan, I served her. In August 1915, I found myself a young subaltern, commanding what was left of a British battalion as it fought its way to the summit of a great hill overlooking the Dardanelles. The battle was prolonged, bloody and confused. At its height, among my men from the Midlands of England, I found some strangers cut off from their own units, Sikhs from the Punjab, Gurkhas from Nepal, soldiers of the Indian Army. I could not speak to them, I could only give them their orders by signs, yet their discipline, cheerfulness and courage on that stricken hillside moved in a way which still 30 years after I still remember. Later in the war I saw more of the Indian Army on other fronts. My first impressions were confirmed, and by rather unscrupulous string pulling, I found myself transferred to one of the battalions I'd first seen in Gallipoli. Thus I followed in the footsteps of thousands of British people who for nearly 300 years were officers of the Indian Army.